We know from the polls this week that a few weeks out from the election, Donald Trump is not in a great spot. He is trailing Biden nationally by 8 to 14 points or so. He's trailing him in the swing states, and that definition is starting to be stretched a little bit, 5 to 7 points. It's not exactly looking the way that Donald Trump would want, but we've talked about that before. Let's go a layer past Donald Trump, and that is to other Republicans that are apparently getting more and more frustrated at Donald Trump for dragging them down. So we have these new polls where he's apparently alienating women, seniors, suburbanites, even though he's made that a big focus of his campaign. He's trailing, blah, 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 all that stuff. But it's even left Biden doing well in states like Montana, Kansas, and Missouri, where he's not supposed to be. Now, that does not mean that he's gonna win those states. That still seems unlikely, but that potentially gives a boost to other Democrats running in those states. And when we look at this is a map of Senate seats that are considered to be in play. This is a lopsided year favoring the Democrats. In 2 or 4 years, it's gonna be bad the other way. But anyway, get ready for that. So you can see that they are playing the defensive in a lot of places, including places that they did not expect they'd have to. And we have some indications starting to trickle out from Republicans that they are really feeling this Trump thing. Senator John Cornyn, running for re-election, has apparently, this is according to the New York Times, lamented privately that Mr. Trump is stuck in the low 40s in polling, holding back other Republicans. That's according to people familiar with his comments. Now, he's still up by like 8 points against MJ Hagar. So he's still got a race. He's probably gonna do just fine, but he's a little bit worried, and notably on Monday, he said to the Houston Chronicle editorial board that Trump let his guard down and said his diagnosis should be a reminder to exercise self-discipline. That is as close as John Cornyn will ever get to criticizing Donald Trump. And it comes as this race is getting a little bit closer.
Brett, yeah, I mean, Martha McSally wouldn't even speak his name. It was like, are you proud of your support for Donald Trump? She's like, I bet I love tennis. Do you want to talk about tennis? Can we talk about literally anything else in the universe? I don't know. Is that fine? So that is one of those things that is a sign when even the rats that are still on this ship are like, I'm gonna find a lifeboat. And it's because he digs such a hole. And Trump has been able to do some things throughout his presidency that most politicians wouldn't dare do for 2 reasons. One, they are playing by the rules that are set out for them, which are necessary to follow to conventionally rise through the ranks of politics. You don't want to rock the boat in any specific way. There's a particular kind of crappy you can be on the Republican Party that's a side that's rewarded. And then, the other thing is like he's been able to shout it out and do all these horrible things that every other politician in their right mind would shy away from. And they've always kind of wanted to do it. But he's gotten away with it, and they kind of have stuck around because they know the alternative is he's gonna start yelling at them. At this point, getting yelled at by Trump seems to not be as risky and suicidal politically as it used to be. And those things that if you've been following politics for a while if you haven't been following politics, they might seem like whispers, but if you have been following politics, this is like them screaming, it needs to end.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the change in whether it's actually good or bad for them, because I have a question for you in a little bit that actually is related to that. I want to run through just a couple of other examples of some concern and some distancing from Donald Trump. So we've got in South Carolina, Republicans have apparently grown deeply concerned about Senator Lindsey Graham's re-election campaign, and Senator Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, has had several sobering conversations with Mr. Graham. According to Republicans familiar with the discussions, they've also apparently taken the National Republican Party, the equivalent of the DSCC. They're taking a more direct role. Yes, exactly. They're taking a more direct role in the campaign, according to the New York Times reporting. Now we've also got Senator Susan Collins, who said about Donald Trump taking off, I believe this was his taking off his mask as soon as he got back to the White House. I couldn't help but think that sent the wrong signal. I did not think it's a good example at all. And she started airing an ad this week that urges voters to vote for her, quote, no matter who you're voting for president. That's not good for Trump. I mean, I doubt he cares, but he'd like to do well in Maine. He could use Maine potentially.
Well, Maine divvies it up.
Exactly. So he really wants those votes. On Thursday, in a conference call with a group of lobbyists, Mitch McConnell vented that the party's Senate candidates are being financially overwhelmed because of small dollar contributions to Act Blue, the online liberal fundraising hub. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that. I would argue, Mitch, you're the one that decided you wanted to try to push through an anti-choice Supreme Court justice in the month leading up to the election. Did you not think that was going to lead to a lot of donations? And it did. We know that as soon as RBG died, tons of money was flooding into Act Blue. This is on him as much as anyone else.
Yes, and so that's one aspect of it, the fundraising. That's something that reliably throughout history, Republicans can rely on two sources of fundraising. One, giant companies, so do the Democrats. And then also, someone's trying to take your guns, please give money to someone now. Those things have not been able to resonate in this cycle. A lot of Republicans are disillusioned. A lot of independents have only one choice really, and if they want to be able to sleep at night, and they've all seemed to come around at least during COVID. Anything can happen between now and the end of the race, so don't get complacent. I would say run up the score if you can. Keep a full list of things that Trump has done, all the way from if people talk to you about it. He hasn't paid anything in taxes. He was broke until The Apprentice. So this whole idea that he's a successful businessman is obviously wrong. He's good on coronavirus. No, he's not. It's in his White House, and he keeps doing stuff to get more coronavirus on people. It just doesn't make sense anymore. I wish it did. I want to help you feel good about voting against him. That's how it is, as opposed to shaming.
Let me ask you a question though, related to this. So if you read this reporting, and the New York Times has a great article, but there's you're starting to see a lot of articles about the rumblings about Trump, and you had Ben Shapiro tweeting if he loses to this flailing 70-year-old guy, it's all on him. That is distancing to the extent that a grifter on the right will do. And they talk about things like him calling off the negotiations, which he's now trying to backtrack on. But one opportunity that he sort of ditched, but might be able to reverse is he said he doesn't want to do the debate. He doesn't have many more great opportunities to turn this thing other than announcing a sham vaccine, which he'll do. But he doesn't have a lot of opportunities to really turn this thing around. Theoretically, the Republicans would want him to backtrack and say he'll do the virtual debate to give them at least a chance that something happens that benefits them. But at this point, do they want him doing that debate? Or is that only likely to make things worse for them, worse than they already are?
I think they probably do want him to do the debate because for a couple of reasons. One, debates typically tighten things. That's what happens. The front runner loses ground in a debate as long as the person they're debating against doesn't totally poop the bed. But the other reason is expectations are now super duper extremely low for the president. The only other side is
that's true. Yeah.
And if you exceed expectations, you're a winner. And that's what's so weird about Trump's entire life, really. But the other thing is, I think the Biden campaign's done a pretty good job, and they need to do more of it, of just saying I don't know if he's sick. And that's a problem. He's self-diagnosed, but he won't tell us anything. So I want to follow the CDC guidelines. This debate is within the window of when he should be self-quarantined based on when he told us he was sick. So now Trump's in a ton of terrible places that he's put himself in. Either he is not able to do this debate, or he was unable to do the last debate. Either way, Biden's got a talking point. The other thing is Trump backed out of this debate. If he comes back into this debate, well, Biden has given up, or Trump has just tucked tail and decided he's hat in hand or whatever. He's come back to he's abandoned his position that he thought was one of strength, but really was just a cage he put himself in.
He thought that it would look strong. That's a weird choice. I don't see how you could think that. Yeah, it doesn't read to me. I don't know why you would make that assumption.
I do want to say the other things is we're talking about electoral leads as perceived from polling. There's a lot that, you remind people of every day that the Republicans are doing to subvert the electoral process. So essentially in South Carolina, they see that Lindsey Graham has a rough go of things. They're actively trying to throw out votes there. All over the country, Texas, it's close, it's within 3. Abbott has restricted the total number of places you can drop off your ballot early. There's tons of litigation about how long after election day they'll still accept ballots coming in due to things Trump's actively done to make the process of mailing ballots slower. In Florida, they've had a decision recently where, like today, where in the last hours of the voter registration period, the server crashed and people couldn't do it online. And they were like, well, why don't we just extend it for the number of hours it was down? A judge stepped in and was like, no, that's fine. So we can measure that there are thousands of people who wanted to vote who can't, not to mention what has happened in Florida since the referendum, where they said that if you've paid your debt to society in terms of serving your time, that felons can once again vote. That was voted on as a 2/3 majority of people in Florida, but Trump and his cronies have made it impossible for Floridian ex-felons to vote because they essentially want to run a poll tax because they know they would get devastated. So already I've enumerated hundreds of thousands of votes that won't count. So we need to run up the score by hundreds of thousands of votes, not to mention the disparity, the skew away from actual democracy that the Electoral College itself presents.
Yeah, you're 100% right. There was one of those challenges about whether your ballot had to be received by close of voting or if it could be after went in the direction of close of voting. So that's bad news. The good news is that what they did in Texas, the one drop-off point per county, they tried to do the same thing in Ohio, and that was overruled. They're going to have more than one in some counties. Doesn't mean you're going to have great access. So again, we're not in the final couple hours of voting. We have weeks to go. Don't wait until the final couple of hours. You should have already voted. You certainly should have registered if you couldn't vote yet. So I'm gonna do what I did yesterday. I want you to type in if you've already voted, put voted in the chat. If you've already registered but not voted, put registered, and then go and vote. So the next time I do this, you can type voted. Won't that feel good? For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.